So we now come to the R.R. Hawkins Award. And I want to return to the theme that I opened this meeting with, which is the Hawkins family and how important R.R. Hawkins was many years ago to what we're all doing today. When I took this over, when I took this assignment on this year, one of the things I wanted to do was to recreate the institutional memory that I really felt we had lost with the Hawkins Award. We give an award every year in the name of the late R.R. Hawkins, Reginald Robert Hawkins, but we really had lost the memory of why he was so important to our industry. And I knew that if we were going to successfully relaunch this, we wanted to find his story and be able to tell it again, which we've now been able to do. And if you go to the website, you'll see much more information, and we'll create an archive of information about this great man. It was not easy to find the Hawkins family, believe it or not. They're dispersed, and they're, I know, in touch with each other, but sometimes, like all families, not as much as probably anyone would like. So we searched, and as some of you know, before I became a publisher, I was a newspaper reporter, so I kind of have a few tricks up my sleeve on how to find people. And that's exactly what we did. We searched and researched, and we soon found the wife and widow of Mr. Hawkins, who's with us today. And we then found other members of the family, and actually so many of them are here, and I want to just tell you who is here. We have Betty Hawkins, R.R. Hawkins' widow, from Atlanta. We have his son, Daniel Hawkins, from Annapolis, Maryland. Daniel is the one person from the family who actually attended this celebration 33 years ago, the very first one. We have R.R.'s daughters, Elizabeth Hawkins Jewett from Randolph, Vermont. We have Dr. Phyllis Hawkins and her husband Mark from Atlanta. And finally, Priscilla Hawkins Burns from Grosse Pointe Park, Michigan. Now, they are the ones who filled in the blanks of who was Reginald Robert Hawkins and why was he such an important person. And he was really a Renaissance man. He began his career at the New York Public Library as a reference assistant in 1926. He gradually worked his way up to be chief of the Science and Technology Division in 1942, and he served there until 1957. You see his photograph on before you. He was dedicated to that great public library in New York City, and he engaged in various activities to support it. He planned and hosted exhibits on technical books in the war in 1943. He served as editor of the library's monthly review, which was called New Technical Books. He was also, we found out, an activist. We located a story about him organizing during the Great Depression a credit union in the city where he lived, Long Island City, New Jersey, right across the East River from New York City. So he was really involved in many, many things, and it's as we began to recreate his story, we understood why 33 years ago it was so important to name this award for him. One of his most significant accomplishments was the authoring of a bibliography entitled Scientific, Medical, and Technical Books, published in the U.S. 1930 to 1944. That was published in 1946 with the support of the State Department, and it really served to help in the rehabilitation of European libraries after World War II. It was a bibliography of the important elements that they should have in their collection as they were rebuilding under the Marshall Plan. In addition to, but you know, it's interesting, in addition to authoring these important scholarly works, he was also involved in a whole bunch of other publishing projects. He wrote do-it-yourself books. He wrote a book about how to build a backyard barbecue, which you can still find at the Library of Congress. He wrote a book about how to build arbors, another one, how to build swimming pools. And all these were ways he felt the average man needed to be a do-it-yourselfer during those troubled times of the Depression and war era, and he wanted to help. So, and he had a bully pulpit at the New York Public Library, so he actually also hosted fetes for these books when they came out. Pretty good. Take a lesson, everybody. He was also a member of every one of the associations that's still important today, including the American Library Association. And then we found that he had also compiled a list of writings by and about the American poet George Edward Woodberry. So he was just a really interesting, fascinating man. He had a passion for this kind of business that we are in, and so now we understand and can tell the story of why it's so important to have this award named after him. He might disagree, though, because as I said earlier, he was a very shy man. He never attended one of these ceremonies. And I think I also said, I'm glad that not all of his children have that trait. So to present the 2008 R.R. Hawkins Award, I would like to introduce to you Priscilla Hawkins Burns, who is actually following in her father's footsteps. She is a public librarian in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. She's currently the reference librarian and branch head of the Woods branch of the Grosse Pointe Public Library. So I give you Priscilla Hawkins Burns to make a few remarks before we present the award.